Okay, this is the book. It's by a British author. His name is Adrian Plass. It's not a new book, but it's a classic. And it's actually two books in one. It is Growing Up Pains, which is his autobiography of coming to faith, and then also The Sacred Diary. It's actually technically The Sacred Diary, age 37 3/4. And so the first is complete nonfiction and absolutely heartrending. I mean, it's just really his journey, and it's very, very well told. The second part is complete fiction, totally made up, in the form of a diary, and it is hilarious. It's kind of like church life, as we all know it, but he actually wrote it down, and it's just wonderful. My point, and I do have one, is there's a motto for the book that covers both stories, and it's down at the bottom, and it says, "Nothing is wasted." Nothing is wasted. Now, remember I said earlier that I think it's important, actually, for you to have sort of everything in mind all the time. And what I mean by that is, there's nothing in the program that you're just simply trying to get through. For all the best reasons in the world, like getting a good grade and graduating, all these things. There are great reasons for taking courses and doing the things that you have to do. But the thing that I really want to impress on you, and hopefully also from my story you'll see what I mean, is that if you will allow it, literally everything that you do in this program will inform the other things in the program that are coming afterward, and even what's after the program. But not everybody does it that way. Not everybody approaches things that way, and I understand there are some very type A, achievement-oriented, I must, master this, and that's fine, but you don't forget. You don't leave it behind. And you realize that this fits into this, and then this fits into this, and you kind of have this mosaic in your head. Now, that doesn't happen right away, but sometimes it does, like in my case. So here's the story, and that is I started my doctorate right after finishing 7 years teaching high school math. And I knew I was going to the doctorate. I had been accepted in the doctorate. And the summer before, my wife and I went to Los Angeles, just see friends, have fun. And one of our friends, as it turns out, knew a fella at Jet Propulsion Laboratories, JPL. They work with NASA, all sorts of cool stuff, the Mars rover, all that stuff. And so this guy found out that my area was math. And he said, there's this kind of new thing that's happening in cognitive science. It's called an intelligent tutor. An intelligent tutor is a computer system that uses artificial intelligence to learn the learner. Okay? And so as the learner is using this computer tutor, the computer essentially is becoming accustomed to the learner, how they do things and how they approach things, the questions they ask, and that sort of thing, and tailors the feedback that they're getting over the course of this. And that sounded so cool. And he said, there's a guy at Land Corporation who's doing this with algebra students right now. And so I could put you in touch with him. And I said, that's great. Didn't know why, how, who knew. But, I took the contact and it was great. Then I started the doctoral program. My first course was measurement theory. And one of the topics in the course was construct validity. And this is basically where you're working with a model, whatever that model is, and you're trying to determine if, let's say you have 20 different variables in this model. You're trying to determine if they all kind of coalesce into different groups. Like these have to do with this, these have to do with this, like that. So I had been told by this guy, JPL, that the intelligent tutors have a model of the student that they work from, and they make the model better, progressively better. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I could validate the data coming from the intelligent tutor to determine whether or not their model is valid, like the way they're thinking that students learn. And this was in the heyday of cognitive science. And so, everything could be modeled using computer programs, and of course we know that's not true, but that's what they thought. And so I got in touch with this guy, and he said, yeah, we've got, I forget how many students, but it was less than 100. He said, we've got reams of data for this thing. We don't know what to do with it. They're literally recording every mouse click, that students will use. And again, it's just like they're kind of, here's the tutor, but they don't know if it's working, and all these kinds of things. He said, I'd love it if you would kind of, look at our model and see if it reflects what the students are thinking and doing. And sure enough, it did. So I did that as a part of the measurement course. And but I just had this idea. I wonder if I could kind of expand that out a little bit, and maybe have it more like hundreds of students and over a long period of time, and see if I get kind of similar results. And that, it turned out, was my dissertation. So essentially, the RAND Corporation data was my pilot study. This is what we're asking you to do in Research 1 and Research 2. And then they turned me on to this group at Carnegie Mellon University. They were trying out an intelligent tutor for geometry with hundreds of kids in the Pittsburgh city schools. And again, reams of data that they didn't know what to do with. And I said, I know what to do with it. And so I need to, kind of make sure that you're understanding what I'm saying. This was not data that I had collected. Okay. So in other words, my focus was not, will my model work, or will, I don't know, like this thing that I've created for math, is that going to be effective? My dissertation was the statistical side, the measurement side, is this data reflective of this model? And that turned out to be a year's worth of work. That was a lot of work. And so there's all kinds of dissertations. But the real advantage that I had going into the dissertation is I had some kind of fidelity model sort of created already of what I could do. All I really had to do was, kind of expand it out. And so that's why we're asking you to do what you're doing, okay? Is to come up with this sort of affirmation, if you will, through Research 1 and 2 of the basic methods, the basic approach, the design, the lit review, all these kinds of things, with a view towards, okay, so what if I just didn't do this for a couple schools? What if I did this for a whole district? What if I did this for multiple districts? What if I did this for the state? There's at least one person who's in here is working with Sarah, and wants to look at the whole state, and that's amazing. That's the kind of thing that you should be thinking. Now, you have to be very narrow in your focus, even though you're talking about statewide. But that's the thinking that we want you to be involved in. Okay? So when we say dissertation process, I'm really talking about everything. I'm talking about from the very beginning, on. So now that also said, let me say one other thing, and that is, I finished my dissertation in 1993. 1994 was the first year that a viable web browser came out. And this was like the very first Mozilla, but it wasn't called Mozilla. And this was like fire. You just can't even imagine, because there was all this data out there. CIA had data, NASA had data, people had images, all these things. But it was all what they call FTP, the file transfer protocol. And you just had to do commands and just wait on this thing, and I don't even know what I'm going to get. I'm just blindly putting in, stuff. Now all of a sudden we could like see stuff and navigate, and it was just like, wow. And all of a sudden it was just like, it just kind of hit me. I could use this for teacher training. I could do teacher training all year long and not have to bring people in to do that stuff. And so literally from 94 until I left for Ukraine in 2002, that's what I was doing. That was the focus of my research. Now I will tell you that if I hadn't done all the dissertation stuff and all the computer stuff and everything else like that, I would not have felt comfortable with what I was doing with the browser, because we were still, are you ready? We were still programming the browsers, okay? So like HTML and all that stuff. And but I was very comfortable with that, and it wasn't a problem. I'm saying that the thing that I thought was going to be the thing was the thing that led to the thing. That's what I'm saying. You don't know what's coming. You have no idea. When you get done with this program, you can have the next thing happen the next day, and all of a sudden it's just like, I need to be involved in that, and that's exactly how I thought. And so there was no way that I could have possibly known that at the beginning of my doctorate. At the beginning of my doctorate, this is 1990, I was just like, email? Are you kidding me? Like, I can communicate with anybody all over the earth, It was incredible, So, yeah, it's kind of a progressive revelation. Anyway, so be open-minded about it. We want you to be focused on this topic so that you can complete the dissertation. But we also would like you to be a well-rounded person and an interesting person, and somebody who can actually have expertise in different areas, that people can call on. Now, let's see. At the end of, another point that I guess I'll make, because this can be discouraging, but I don't want it to be, because I just need you to know, as Dr. Strike mentioned this morning, that we know that life happens, okay? You choose this thing to focus on, this program that you want to investigate, whatever. Let's say it's a state program or a district program. And you get up right to the point where you're going to start collecting data, and they stop the program. There is nothing you can do about that. And you just have to pivot and move on. That happens. Here's another thing that happens. You wind up having to move. And so you move districts. You had all sort of permissions in the other district, and you got nothing in this district. Now, maybe they'll still let you do something. I had a student that happened to in the master's program, and they were very gracious to still let her have access to the things that she needed to have access in this former district, but that may not happen. And so, again, we understand. One of the nice things about the pilot study, as with my pilot study, is that it doesn't have to be done in the same place in the same way as the dissertation. So you can consider it to be kind of a self-contained thing, this thing that you're doing in Research 1 and Research 2. And then you can just kind of move on as you need to. It's either bigger, better, different, in a different place, something like that, but nonetheless it can be that. So that's part of the function of the dissertation committee chair, is to kind of walk you through that process, kind of go through it with you so that you don't feel like you're facing this on your own and you've got to figure it all out by yourself. And that's why you want someone you can really relate to be dissertation committee chair. My chair didn't know one single thing about what I was doing with my dissertation. Not one thing. His area was math, and yeah, it was a math tutor, but that was it. That was as far as anything went. He was there to keep everybody else happy. All right? He was there to keep the committee members happy, and working together. He was there to keep me happy, and just if I broke down in front of him and said, it'll be fine, it's okay. And he did his job. He did his job. Yeah, and he was great to relate with, do anything for you, that kind of thing. So do consider those different functions that we were talking about this morning. They really need to be different people. They really need to be, not obviously different people, but different expertise, different focus, different ways that they can help you. You need an expert in this thing that you're dealing with. You need that kind of reader. You need an expert in methodology. You really do need somebody who's going to say, you know what, that's completely the wrong approach to this data. Somebody's got to be able to tell you that. That may or may not be your chair. Your chair is the one who has to hold your hand while you're crying and say, it's going to be fine. We're going to work on this together. We'll get through it. Or if you really are stuck, just like Dr. Streck was saying, give you deadlines. Let's move through this thing. You can do it kind of one step at a time. That's an incredibly valuable thing in this process. There is a tendency to think in the doctoral program of everything being very linear. Okay? That is, well, I do the coursework, I get to this number of credits, then I form my committee, I get to this number of credits, I do the comp assessment, I do, and then I, et cetera, et cetera. The doctoral process is not in any way, shape, or form. I would consider it much more like looping. You go through something, and then you go through it again in a different way, and then you go through it again. And some of you have already questioned why you have to do this mock dissertation, and then you have to do the research 1 and 2, and then you have to do the dissertation for real. It is the same process, okay, but it is completely different ways of looking at things. And so at the end of July, I'm going to be going to Jordan to teach at a Bible college there. And I'm teaching the book of Revelation for the first time. They asked for it. I wouldn't have chosen it. And so the thing that I noticed this time through Revelation that I never saw really before was how John writes like an Old Testament prophet. He will show you this sort of big expanse. Here's, the end times. Here's the tribulation and all this stuff. And then he'll just zoom in on one part. And he'll zoom back out. And he'll zoom in on another part. He's already told you about everything that's going to happen, But he says, now let me give you a little bit more detail about this. This is what you're doing, okay? So you've all had research tools, you all have, seen the library resources. You've had a chance to kind of, play around a little bit and stuff like that. But then somebody says, okay, now write a lit review. Well, that's a different thing. That's not playing around. Like this is really serious. I got to find these serious sources for my lit review. And we're asking you to do that in Research 1. We're asking you to do it for the mock dissertation proposal, which you've already done. The thing to keep in mind is exactly what Dr. Streck said. If you will engage, okay, if you will not kick and scream, and if you will not, say, it's useless, what is this, I don't do with the dissertation. If you will engage with the process, by the time you get to this thing with the dissertation, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If we're talking about the methodology, if we're talking about the lit review, if we're talking about the analysis, it doesn't matter. You will be so comfortable with that approach and that way of doing things, you will know exactly where to look, you'll know exactly who to talk to, and that's not going to be the thing that gets in your way. See, the thing that gets in your way mostly is data collection, data analysis, that sort of thing. If that's your only problem in this dissertation, you're doing great. Okay? So if you know where to get everything that you need, and you know that this is a pretty good idea, I've already tested it out in my pilot, and you can say that to a committee, I've completed this study all the way through. It's a smaller version of what I have in mind. That carries a lot of weight with a committee. Whereas if you say, I've never done this in my life and I have no idea if it'll work out, that's a different story. So we don't want you to be in that situation. We want you to be in the other situation. Okay? Are you all tracking? Are you understanding what I'm doing? Do you even believe me? Okay. Fine. Don't believe me. See what happens. All right. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. Okay, as the kids would say. We don't want you to be a one-trick pony when you get at it. Okay. I am a polyglot. I love to know something about everything. There's a book back there that's by me that is practical theology. It has nothing to do with math, little to do with education. It's just something that was on my heart to write. That's all. It's just something that I like to spend time doing and thinking about and writing about. We don't want you to be uninteresting people, okay? So be involved in different things, have a lot of interest, fine. But what we're saying is for the dissertation, please be focused. And narrow that focus down sufficiently, not in terms of numbers, not in terms of districts, not in terms of state or any of that stuff, but in terms of the research questions. What research questions can you reasonably answer in this time period that you have planned for the dissertation? A lot of people try to, if they think about the dissertation at all, some people don't. About 50%. Did you know that 50% of people never finish their doctorate? They finish the coursework, and they never do the dissertation. That's what we're trying to avoid with this system. But anyway, if they think about the dissertation, what they want to do is change the world. They want to save the world and feel like it's up to them in their dissertation to do that. There is no dissertation that has ever saved the world. It just doesn't work like that. At most, a dissertation gives a way forward. It gives kind of an indication of, I think this would be a good research agenda for me for the future. If you're in that game, maybe you're not in that game. So my thing was, I went right into higher ed, right after the doctorate, and so I had to come up with a research agenda. That was an expectation in the place where I was working. Leave saving the world for a few years from now. Stay focused on the thing that will allow you to finish the dissertation in a reasonable amount of time. I will talk on, what day is it? Well, we have breakouts, I think it's Thursday afternoon. And I'm going to talk about forming research questions. Like, how can that possibly be its own session? What do you possibly have to say? You would be amazed. You would be amazed. So, anyway, I encourage you to really think along those lines. Think about, not only in terms of the dissertation, but in terms of research 1 and 2. What can I reasonably expect to finish in a reasonable amount of time, okay, in this program? Okay. Let's see. Well, I'll throw this out just for fun. You may disagree with me right now. Perhaps you will agree with me later. I don't think, honestly, that there's any fluff in this program. Now, you might say, wow, 54 credits, 3 years. Are you kidding me? Of course, there's a bunch of fluff in here. I believe that everything works kind of together, if you will let it. And if you will not write things off, write people off, this is a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. But say, what is going to help me here? And that's that's a good question to keep on asking yourself. What in this course, at this moment, this week, is going to help me in the future, whether it's in the program or not? You know, who knows? So I encourage you to kind of go the extra mile. If you've, I don't know, written something and gotten some feedback on it, but we don't require a revision, I would revise it anyway, just for yourself. I would just go ahead and do those revisions. Definitely, if we give you revisions and we ask for a new submission, absolutely you're going to do that. But nonetheless, if we don't ask for it, do it anyway. If we don't assign a particular book, but you're interested, read it anyway. If you have a bunch of journal articles to get through for your lit review, do something more than just read the abstract. You know? At least skim the article. And kind of get to the end, you know, with the conclusion that, you know, where are they going with this thing? I cannot tell you how many times in my dissertation process I went looking for one thing and I found another thing. I cannot tell you how many times that happened. Now, in the old days, that used to be going to the library, you know, take a book off of the shelf and realize, oh, that book next to this book, that actually looks pretty interesting too. And you just wind up picking a stack of books. Well, here now, of course, everything's electronic. But nonetheless, you have these reference lists, you know, at the end of a journal article or even in a book. And just taking a moment, just scan through that, you know. What else looks interesting? What else looks like it might have something to do with your topic? I just cannot possibly encourage you enough because, as we said this morning, Dr. E said, at the end of the day, people are, believe it or not, are going to call you an expert in some particular area. And they're actually going to call on you and say, well, you did your dissertation in this, so, you know, why don't you do this next study, or why don't you do, you know, why don't you do this workshop for us, or why don't you do this training for us, or why don't, you know, whatever. Why don't you set up the system for us? And all I can say is, the more you've been exposed to in this program, before that ever happens, the more comfortable you will be with that question. But please just know, that's how people view. If you've got doctor in front of your name, you know, they'll probably actually over-assume, actually, what it is that you're an expert in. You have to sometimes tell them, not this, but this, but you have to claim something. You have to, you know, claim your ground and plant your flag. And yes, actually, yes, I have spent a lot of time looking at this. And as Dr. Shrike said, more time than your committee. You know, you're more of an expert in some ways than your committee members. So just have all these things in mind. It's not worth just trying to get through these courses and these requirements and that sort of thing. It's just not going to turn out well, probably. Because you're going to get to a point where you're going to feel overwhelmed. And we don't want you to be in that situation. All right, so finally at last, how about some nuts and bolts, okay, of the dissertation process? We just went through the milestones. You're getting a brief introduction to the process through the course that you're in right now, generating the mock dissertation. You've already done chapters 1 and 2. The remaining chapters are going to be finished, you know, once the residency week is over. You've already seen how storyboarding or the 4 moves can be used to kind of get a nice overview of the project, whatever it is that you're working on. I would note that you can use those 4 moves for anything. So dissertation, journal article, conference paper, it doesn't matter. It works for all those things. Answering those questions are, you know, just terribly important to understand, where am I going with this thing? It also is a super big help in writing an abstract. So I recommend that you kind of keep that current, okay? Hold on to that tool. And the course is also going to give you a little bit of experience with the IRB process. So that's going to be one of the submissions, is the IRB form for your mock dissertation. Okay, so we're still in that realm. Okay, and we're going to consider that to be exempt research, so it's not going to require a committee review. The way that goes, by the way, is if it's exempt research, that means that only the chair really needs to look at it from the committee, from the Research Ethics Committee. If it's something more than that, then potentially all the committee members are looking at it, and all the committee members are voting on it. So we're going to consider it to be exempt research, and you're just basically filling out the form to the best of your ability. Yes.
Who determines whether or not it's exempt?
The chair of the IRB committee. Yes. Yeah, that's that person's call. That's one of their job requirements. So as for the actual dissertation, you're beginning that for many of you, first cohort, bleeding edge people, in the fall, and I mean, it's sort of upon you. For the others, there's a little bit of a gap there. You can kind of take your time, maybe a little bit more, thinking about those dissertation committee members. But pretty much this week is going to kind of tell the tale. As you meet these people and as you read their bios, you'll start getting a pretty good idea who you can work with better. Now, for those in the third cohort that started in January, this is going to be a stretch, okay? And this is going to be a stretch. And the reason is because you haven't even had research once. So you haven't necessarily thought a whole lot about, kind of a potential topic or anything else like that. Nonetheless, here's what I really want to say, okay, from my experience. My experience is I came in with an interest. I came in with something that I was interested in knowing more about. And I used the dissertation to follow that interest. It's highly likely, even if you just started in January, but for everybody, that you have some particular interest in the classroom. It may have started in your master's program, something that you researched, and it was just like, well, I'd like to know more about that. It may be because of some issue that's facing your school or your district or even the state, some gap that really needs to be filled, some research that simply hasn't been done on a whole bunch of collected data, like, for instance, teacher mentoring, new teacher mentoring for the SARA data. Those kinds of things. You probably have something in the back of your mind like, I wish I knew more. I wish, in general, we all knew more so that we could get better at whatever it is that you're talking about. That's a good thing to have in mind. It may not be the thing, but it may be the thing that leads to the thing. So as you're thinking about dissertation committee members, you can think in those terms. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Once the committee's chosen, next major milestone is the comp assessment. We've talked about that. Once that's finished, you start the dissertation process in earnest. Think of this next step, the dissertation proposal defense, as being basically the first 3 chapters. This is essentially an expanded form of a souped-up version of what you submit for Research 1. And this was asked earlier, what is the difference between those two things? And the difference is just scope. That's the major thing. If, in fact, your topic is not changed, it's the fact that you're now not dealing with one school, you're dealing with multiple schools, you're dealing with the whole district, you're dealing with the state, whatever it might be. But also, the listening has become deeper. Your understanding has become deeper. Perhaps you have refined the research questions a little bit because of your experience. Like, I can definitely answer this. There was no way I could answer this. That kind of thing. So, essentially, that's what that defense is the first 3 chapters. Once the dissertation topic has been approved by the committee, then it's the IRB review, which, again, shouldn't take all that long, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4. Then you're on to the big jump. So this is then Chapter 4, which is the data collection and also the data analysis, and then Chapter 5, the conclusions. This is always where the most time is. The data collections can take quite a while. I mean, if you think about it, if you're, I don't know what, interested in map data year to year or something like that, well, there it is. You've got a year, you know. So, or you're interested in looking back at data that already exists. And that's fine, you know, over a number of years. Well, it's getting access to the data and, you know, all these other things. Using R and having, you know, some sort of usable product come out of R. Once that's done, then, you know, to put it in some kind of summary form that can be presented, and then the really hard work starts, which is, what does all this mean? For those who have been through Research 1, I think I said this to you, I'm not sure. When you get to the end, with Chapter 5, the conclusions, the most important thing is then you look back to what you've already done, like in the lit review, and say, how does this match up? You know, and what are like remaining gaps and potential things that could be recommended for future research? All these kinds of things. This is where your voice comes in. Okay, so in your book, the Detox Your Writing book, it talks about finding your voice. It talks about using I, and, you know, all these kinds of things. That's a new thing, okay, in research. When I went through my doctorate, if you use the pronoun I, it was over. I mean, that was, you know, okay, back to the drawing board. You don't understand anything. So it was always the researcher or we, even though it's one person, you know, we found. Anyway, now APA has kind of loosened up a little bit. Said, yeah, actually, you can use that personal pronoun, but it really needs to be you speaking, right? So it's not like I just simply to say, I went out and found this data, and then I analyzed it, and then I. It's more along the lines of looking at all this data and the analysis of the data, I infer from this, etc. Or in a qualitative study, you know, being a participant researcher, you know, you're in with them, and your I is terribly important because it's not only what you're seeing, but it's what you're experiencing. So, and I'll talk more about that when I talk about research writing and storytelling. So there are good places to use I. There are less good places to use I. But it's finding your voice, finding what it means to be an expert in this particular area. And that is not an easy transition. So I think Dr. Strike has mentioned already this kind of transition that you do from like bachelor's to master's, you know. Well, there's another transition, you know, master's to doctorate. You're used to being sort of on the outside, you know. So you read a book and you write a paper about the book, you know. You're used to being able to be like a passive observer. Now we're asking you to be so involved that actually it kind of changes you in the process. We don't want you just to be unaffected by this. Those days are over. That way of looking at research is over. It died with the 20th century. So the dispassionate, detached observer, it was just a myth from the beginning, but that was the prevailing myth. Now we understand everybody, you're always going to be changed by what you experience, even if you're just analyzing a data set, you're going to be changed by it because it's like, this confirms what I thought all along. Or what I thought is trash. Whatever, you know. It is going to change you, and if you, again, would be, for instance, a participant researcher where you're actually involved in the activities too, right along with students, right along with teachers, whatever it is, whoever it is that you're looking at, superintendents, anybody, it's quite possible that you will actually change the environment by being in the environment. Okay, and I will talk more about this later as well. And so to be the detached observer after something like that doesn't even make any sense. You know? So you almost have to talk about your experience as much as you need to talk about their experience. See what I'm saying? So this is not a book report. This is not even really a lit review. You know, this is a comprehensive thing that changes you and changes potentially others. Not the world, but a certain population. Okay? So think in those terms. All right. And then at the end, once everything's done, then that's the dissertation defense. Both the proposal of defense and the dissertation defense are open to the public. We can have people. I zoomed in to the one last week that Dr. Strike was on, just as an observer. I didn't say anything, didn't ask anything, anything like that. But literally anybody can show up. Okay.
Which ones were the dissertation defense?
The proposal defense, and then also at the end. Funny story. So I came to my defense, and I had the best defense there ever was in the history of defenses. And I'll tell you why, okay? I went to Chapel Hill. Don't hold it against me. And the night before my defense, we played in the national championship. And we won. Now, I didn't know we won until I woke up in the morning and I watched the tape because I couldn't stay up that way, and be coherent. I woke up in the morning, I saw, yep, we won. My wife had already decided we were going to deck the entire place out in Carolina blue, and we were going to cater breakfast for everybody. This is 8 a.m., okay? So you can imagine what condition these people were in on my dissertation committee. They come in like this, and it was a breeze. It was just, it was a breeze. And they were just smiling and happy and eating their breakfast, and Carolina blue everywhere, and, just won the national championship, and, isn't this dissertation great? It's the most awesome thing. Until my friend, okay, who I had gone through 3 years of a doctoral program with, my friend asked me a question. And he picked the nitpickiest little detail, the thing that's kind of hanging out there, that if you asked, I didn't know if exactly I could defend it, like this, and that's what he asked about. And I said, I muddled my way through, but I'm telling you, that was the one glitch, it was open to the public. So, one reason that it's open to the public, A, you are now an expert. People like to hear experts talking. But also, B, it really does keep you on your toes. And so, remember, the committee's been with you, low these many months and years and that sort of thing. So they know what's coming. They know what to expect. They've asked their questions. But these other people, this is probably their first time hearing this. And, anything could be asked. It's just wonderful. So I just note this for you because this is like your life from this point on. Okay? Your life, you are living in the fishbowl. If you thought you were living in a fishbowl as a teacher, this is the whole world looking at you. You put out an article, especially online, because we have so many online journals now. And it's like the whole world is reading your stuff. And the whole world starts asking you questions. That's how it goes, Or people say, wouldn't you come to our school? Wouldn't you come to our district and talk about X, whatever it is that you're an expert in? And it's just a different world. It's just a different life, which I think is particularly cool. But, some people it's a little bit intimidating. But kind of get used to that idea. And when you think in those terms, when you think about the end, okay, then you want to be real good about the process. You want to make sure that you hit all of those, understandings and everything that you're supposed to hit before you get to that end. That you really have just raked over the literature. You really have thought through the methodology. You really have thought about not only your opinion about something, but everybody else's opinion about something. And you've answered their questions and their issues and the issues that they raise. And you know it cold. You just know it cold. That's where we want you to be at the end of this thing. And if you don't feel like you're ready for that, that's good, because you're not. You're just not. And so if you're thinking in terms of, when can I start this dissertation? When can I get out of here? You've already missed the point. You've missed the point. So backtrack, rewind, okay? Come back and just dive in. Just dive in. And I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be totally worth it. Are there questions at this point?
Are we able to Zoom some of these dissertation defenses so that we can see what they're looking
Oh yeah, you could definitely sit in on some. Yeah.
like? How do we know when they
If you will ask Dr. Strike, she probably has one or two coming up. Also, remind me your cohort.
The August.
Okay, the bleeding edge people. We'll probably be defending before you have to do something like that, and so it'll be awesome. You can
Silent supporters.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you anything. I won't do that.
They're going to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, leading questions. Things will make them look good. Are there other questions? All right. So, next session, we're going to have you kind of look through those bios in preparation for actually meeting the people who could potentially be on a dissertation committee. Right now, I would like you to take a few minutes, if you would please, with the people sitting near you, and come up with 5 questions that you would like to ask potential committee members. 5 questions that you think are important. And we're going to share.
What was your dissertation on?
Have you, how many times have you served in that would be like That's one thing you recommend that I read right now. And how those questions
well with.
I was pretty sure it is. I feel like
That's good.
Okay, so how do we ask this question? I mean, it says
I'd probably like to see, how early do you get up? Like there's one lady who says early childhood, especially areas. I would like, so I'm like, okay, but I'd like to apply. Or in a district that has it could be a one area's more what demographics did you work with?
Is that enough time to please get us started? Another minute, maybe? Okay, we're going to give each other ideas about questions that can be asked. But first, let me give you just a little housekeeping things about the session with the potential committee members. There's going to be 4 different sessions. If you look at the breakout, one group will be in here because we'll have some potential committee members zooming in. And so they'll be with us via Zoom. But then there will also be 3 other groups that are meeting downstairs. Okay? So it'll be, I think Dr. Strike's in here, and then Dr. Hughes, Dr. Hall-Hyman, and myself will be downstairs. And it's round tables, that's all it is. So you can just go around. It's like a smorgasbord. You just go around, you ask, and you visit, and get to know, and everything else like that. There's no timetable on being one place at one time. So if it's not looking great in some particular room, you just move to the next room. That's absolutely fine. Okay? All right, questions that you would like to ask. Throw some out at me.
What drives your passion for research?
Okay. There. Very good. What drives your passion for research? Okay? Right. Okay, another one.
We had, how do you motivate others to accomplish a goal?
How do you motivate others to accomplish it? Okay. What else?
We had, how do you slow a student down who's trying to go full bore and needs to sort of maybe take a pause and kind of pull back a little bit?
All right.
Somewhere to go getter, let's go.
Right. How do you slow down the go-getter? Another one that I would think about related to that is how do you work with someone who is stuck? Not that that would ever happen to you. Just saying. What?
We said, what do you see as the current trends
Oh, okay.
in education?
What are the current trends in education? Excellent. From their perspective. Something else.
Is there something that we could ask that could possibly be offensive, so I then not ask those questions? I fear that.
I guess one thing to realize is that people will have more experience at this and less experience at this, okay? So asking simply, how many of these have you done before, So there's nicer ways of saying that. Could you tell me about your experience working with doctoral communities? Something like that. Yeah. So.
Well, the two questions that I think we kind of came up with that stick out.
Okay.
What is your experience in your specialty? Does
Okay,
that sound
great.
right?
What's your
And then
experience in your specialty?
I feel like this might be offensive because not everyone is published, but like, what have you published?
Okay,
But
what
like,
have
how
you
do you
published?
ask that with them?
That's reasonable. But think of published as being kind of writ large, and so you can talk about articles, you can talk about books, but you can also talk about conference presentations, conference proceedings. There's a lot of ways to be published, and so you could also ask just in terms of what kinds of conferences you tend to go to, what kinds of professional conferences do you go to. That could kind of spark something. You will be able to tell mostly from their bio, but you could just get them to say, tell me what you do on a day-to-day basis. What's your job about? This could be one of those people that you want their job. Like they explain what they do, and they're an expert in such and such, and you go, wow, I'd like to do that,
When you plan to retire.
Perfect. We'll never be on that. Something else?
How do you connect your work to the community?
Oh, how do you connect your work to the community? Also, maybe what aspect of your work lends itself to research? Because, I was involved in math ed research that was specifically doing, teacher training. That was my area. So if you say, what kind of math research are you doing? Oh, I'm not doing any. What kind of research are you doing with teachers? Oh, okay, I can talk about that. Something else? These are good ideas. Yeah.
We also asked, how do you help a candidate to stay focused on their topic?
Perfect. How do you help a candidate keep focused? Okay. You also understand that there would be different kinds of questions that you would ask for different potential roles. Now, if you look at just the list of names, what you'll see is that there are some who say, yeah, I can do whatever on your committee. Then there are some that are only methodologists, only reader, So have that in the back of your mind too when you're talking to these people. Don't talk about being a methodologist if they're only going to be a reader, or something like that. Or if they say, hey, I actually could do, any of those three, try to just get at the thing that you think is important, like, I don't know, about being a chair. How would you relate, if, like, for instance, somebody's having a problem, is stuck and needs to get unstuck. But the question for the methodologist would be something a little bit different. Tell me your experience with qualitative methods and qualitative inquiry. You could also ask about mixed methods, because not everybody has experience with mixed methods. They tend to be quantitative or qualitative. So have they actually done both? That would be an interesting question.
How much are the methodologists allowed to help you? I mean, I know that would probably be my weakest part. Can I go to them and say, I'm lost, and they be able to explain some stuff to us? Or do they expect us to have gone and know all the stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, you will receive training, in some aspects of that. The problem is the depth. If you really want to follow some particular, inquiry method or something like that, you may have heard about it, but you may not have heard everything that you need to know about it. So they would have expected that you do a little bit of homework, and you have suggestions of maybe one or two or three things that you could do, ways that you could do it, and they could say, that's really stupid, or that's a great idea, something like that. So.
I have a question.
Okay.
It may be a crazy question, but someone like you, could we ask if you were given a choice to do any of the roles, since you could do all three, which one would you choose and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. If they're down for all three or down for two, which would you really rather choose? That's a great question.
I have just a question in general.
Uh-huh.
So the one member that I'm just kind of stuck on, and maybe I don't necessarily know how to go about asking questions, would be the methodologist.
Okay.
So I wrote down when Dr. Straight was talking earlier that this is someone that you need to have some early discussions with about your research design.
Okay.
But I guess this is the part that I am also kind of most confused on right now. So would you have, I've got a couple of things that I think that you had said about like what aspect of your work lends itself to research. I don't know if someone said that, but are there some things that maybe you would suggest and for like specifically for methodologists? What are some things?
If you're talking to somebody who could potentially be a methodologist, in your case, in your cohort's case, I would say, look, this is what I've already done in Research 1. How do you think, what do you consider to be kind of the best approach? Or what do you think of this approach? What can be added to this approach? Whatever it might be. Like, here's my goal. My goal is mixed methods. I'm okay with the quantitative, not so sure about the qualitative. Is that something that you could, feel like you can help with? So just trying to get into the weeds a little bit with maybe a specific topic or a specific approach that you have. For the rest of you, yeah, it's going to be not quite so much detail, probably. But keep in mind, this is not the only time that you have to interact with these people. This is where everybody happens to be at the same place at the same time. But you always have their contact information, and so you can always just drop them a line and months from now and say, okay, I'm now at the point where I can think clearly about this, so I'd like to ask you. Okay. Fine. Well, so the time until 2 is designated for looking over the bios, especially if you haven't, you really need to, or maybe looking over them in some more detail now that we've had this discussion. Then there's a break until 2:15, and 2:15 is when we start with all this stuff, okay, with meeting people. So I would just note to you that the coffee shop is open until 2. So you can read anywhere. And so if you want to go get something, that's fine. Just please be back in this general area by 2:15.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
All of the listed members don't have a bio. Like, I noticed that Dr. Pugh's not
Like, it's not White Pew.
Kelly Pugh's
Oh, Kelly Pew, I'm sorry. Yeah.
like her bio information.
All right. Well, then that would be good. If she shows up like by Zoom or something else, then say, what's your story? We'll just have to fill that in, like on the EDD portal. It's just
And a lot of the readers are missing.
What do you want to know about Kelly Pew?
Oh, nothing. I just had a class with her last time. That's great. I loved it.
All right.
Been an adjunct for us for years.
Yeah.
Well, she did the one with Holly Hughes Jacobs, and
Yeah.
Jacobs talks about contemporary teaching, and I'm kind of leaning towards blended learning.
Okay.
I feel like she would be an asset.
She's very experienced within the state. She was at Wren. She was superintendent in Pickens for a while. Rock Hill.
Yeah.
And I think she's back to Anderson now.
Yeah. All right. Break. And Greenville Drive tickets. Greenville Drive tickets.
I will share one thing about the library. The can within the machines are almost all Pepsi. Except for the one vending machine in the library that does have that.
One vending machine.
Good.